The views and opinions expressed on any program are those of the producers and/or the persons appearing on the program, and do not necessarily reflect the views and opinions of FRC Media, Bristol Community College, or the City of Fall River.
Well, hello. Welcome to Spindle City Straight Talk. I'm Chip.
And I'm CJ.
And it is Friday in the Riv, and it's basically the show we're going to do before Memorial Day, because we will not be doing a show. So we're going to digress a little bit after we have the COVID report from CJ.
Sounds like a plan to me. As of yesterday, the COVID numbers were 660,513 total cases, 215 new cases, 17,491 total deaths, 9 new deaths, and 66,556 in Bristol County. The mayor, once again, did not issue a statement regarding the number of cases or deaths in Fall River. I'm assuming now, after 3 consecutive weeks, that the mayor isn't going to do this anymore. We're also getting to the point here on whether or not I will continue to be reporting on them, because the numbers have gone down significantly. And I think the state may be thinking twice about now reporting these numbers. As long as they report them, I should report them, but it is getting a little tedious. But such is life. Hey, Chip, did you hear? We had another shooting.
What?
We had another shooting.
Yes, I did.
Imagine that.
Well, I guess, as you said on the last show, we're going to have to move the cops. Oh, they're going to be on they're going to have like a bullet train to go to every section of the city. Right. Because that's the. What are you going to do?
I had some conversations.
We can.
I had some conversations with some people in city government, within the police department. And do you know that the police keep saying they want more police officers on the job, correct? Am I correct in that statement? Okay. Meanwhile, the police union has negotiated that they don't put more police officers on the streets. They've negotiated to keep the number of cars on the streets at 10 instead of 12. So we have people doubling up. And I found out that the reason for this is that they prefer the comp time over the overtime. The fact that this mayor capitulated to that demand in the contract says that he's not really much of a law and order type mayor. That's for sure. So, again, another issue that his competitors in the mayoral race can bring up against him, that he capitulated on yet another item in the contract.
Well, that's I don't know. That's pretty bad. We know we need police presence. We know we need more police on the street. And in fact, if they only have 10 cars on the street, maybe we don't need more police. Maybe we need a mayor to stand up and say, we're going to dedicate, just like they do in schools when we see massive amounts of administrators and very little teaching, and classroom sizes getting worse and education begins to fail. Maybe somebody should have at the bargaining table said, listen, this is your public safety. We want police on the streets protecting the public. Your days off, well, you'll get them when you get them. I don't know how anybody reduced the number of cars and actually allowed that to go through on the contract. That's just ridiculous. It shows a total lack of concern for safety. And I mean, let's face it, from a negotiating point, the police can't really justify that. You're here to police, and policing is on the street. When New York when Giuliani turned New York around, where did he put the cops? He didn't give them more days off. He put more cops on the street. And believe me, they do need days off. Let me qualify.
There's no question about it.
I'm not condemning. I'm not saying they don't need days off. I'm not saying they don't need vacations. They need a lot of them, especially in today's day and age. But to say that you're not going to keep maximum amounts of police personnel on the street protecting the public, just not a good position to take. You can work out schedules. Yeah, okay. If you reassign some of these people into street positions out on the street, then you'll be able to get more cars on the street and still have enough time to give days off. Or you do it in non-prime time, and that can be worked out. But that's a negotiating issue. But that's just, I don't know how that can even happen. I mean, if that's true, that is a big story. Excuse me, my dog is starting on a comforter again.
Well, it is a big story because we've had the police chief come before the city council asking us over and over again for more police officers and touting that we have so many police officers in the academy and they are waiting to put them on the street. But where are we going to put them? If we only have 10 cars, are we putting them in the car? We are obviously putting them, 2 officers to a car. I've seen that. And in the first year, that's probably a very good thing to have a rookie in a car with another officer. But we should have the 12 cars on the streets because, when we have an issue like the shooting at Griffin Park, like the shooting that happened over on Bradford Avenue by Kennedy Park, that tells you something because what happens is, half, if not more, of the city police force goes to that crime scene because they're needed. And that leaves other areas of the city open. And, I said very clearly the other day that we can't have this because other neighborhoods are going to start asking for their time. We need protection here. We need protection there. So where is it going to come from? I have to say very clearly, we can't find the time now with the 10 officers we have on the street. I will say, though, that I witnessed 2 or 3 officers riding a bike. And I like the bike patrols in the summer. Those are great assets to Fall River because they get right out there in the public and people see them. It's not like they're sitting in their car with a door keeping a barrier, between the public and the officer. It can be difficult, I think, for the public to feel comfortable addressing a police officer, especially when they're in their car or whatever. But again, when major issues happen, like shootings, we lose half of our force to that incident. And rightly so. But that leaves the rest of the city open. And once again, neighborhoods and other areas of the city is going to say, where's my protection? I want my protection. And it happens. It happens a lot.
Well, listen, you shouldn't be adding personnel to give days off. You add personnel because you want to do more policing. And we've been saying this for a long time since we've been on the air that we should have more cars on the street. At one time, we had a bunch of walking beats. We need more police presence, period. That's simple. And to put something in that, you're actually going to reduce the number of cars from what we had years ago because you've got people on duty. I mean, even if you had some kind of instrument in it, it said, obviously if it's there's a recall procedure to get 2 cars back. If it's in the middle of the winter, it's extremely low crime. But just to make it unilaterally that they can shut down cars because for days off, especially in a city that's been number one in crime for 2 straight years in the state, and with all the problems we're seeing now, it's just wrong. It's just wrong. It's it's unfortunate that is even happening. And if that is happening, somebody should really reassess that. So, I mean, that's just wrong. It's like saying, let's add more administrators and less teachers to teach children. Well,
the police department did that. The police department did that. They added 2 captains.
Yeah, well, that's exactly right. But this is the problem. The problem is that this is, this is unacceptable. And I mean, nobody respects what they do more than I do, especially in today's day and age. They can't get police anywhere, and I'm sure they need days off. They need time off, but that's got to be structured with the size of the department. I mean, when you can look, and I'm not an expert in policing, but police. But the fact is, I'm sure that they have the same kind of thing that we do with fire departments. When you structure a fire department and you give them vacations and personal days, the complement of that department has to be large enough to have that department manned when people are getting personal days and are getting vacations. That's why you have to have it. Right. 3 men on a piece on a fire truck doesn't mean you only have 12 men in a company. You need more than that in a company, because you have to have enough men to keep that manning level, which is inadequate, by the way, when people are on vacation. And personal days can be granted during non-prime times and stuff like that. That's the way these things are structured. I am not uninformed on this, because I negotiated contracts. We had to look at manpower, and we were always complaining about more manning. There is a way to do this without jeopardizing, the safety, fire safety. And in the case of the police, they have to sit down and really do an in-depth dive and see how many police officers they need to increase the presence on the street and still allow them to adhere to what they negotiated for vacations and benefits, because they do need them, but not at the expense of public safety. You're not taking cars off the street. We're in the middle of a crisis here. That is in the contract, and that, I'm sure it doesn't say only when you want. It says that they can basically shut down 2 cars and give people a day off, and that's just under any circumstances based on the manpower, and that's wrong. It's just wrong. And there is a way to do it. It takes a little bit of work. If you open up the National Fire Protection Handbook, it'll tell you how, it'll give you a guide of how to figure it out. But we had to do it all over again in the fire department when we went from a 48-hour week to a 42-hour week, because obviously people were getting more time off. Excuse me.
People are getting more time off, and I'm not an expert on the fire department. I'm not an expert in the police department, but I can tell you now, if we're going to ask for more police officers, let's get more cars on the street. If we're going to ask for more police officers, let's be sure they have a place to go. Let's be sure we have a place to put them to work, because believe me, crime is going up, and the excuse that it's going up across the country, or that violent crime and shootings are going up across the country, is not an excuse to happen here. It just doesn't work that way. We don't need excuses. We need work. We need people to do the job. So that's difficult enough.
Well, I know. Well, let's see, CJ. We're halfway through. I want to just, I want to read this letter. Monday is Memorial Day. It's an extremely personal thing with me, You know, Memorial Day is about remembering, and it's about remembering the sacrifices people made, not for political gain, not to get reelected, but giving their lives for their nation. We just saw the Vietnam Wall be put down at Heritage State Park. And you know, remember, we've had literally millions of Americans die from the Revolutionary War. The Civil War had over 623,000, the largest loss of American life in any war. Second World War was nearly 500,000. All the other associated wars we've had Indian wars and things like that. But all these men and women gave their lives for their nation. They gave their lives without regard for their own safety. To do what? Not to worry about pronouns or things. They gave them to allow this country to be free and to be able to work through its issues. This country isn't perfect, but it's the best country in the world, and it's the best country in the world because of the men and women who laid down their lives for this nation. So I'm going to read a letter. It's a speech that was given by somebody I know, Brad Tenney, who was the president of the Cambridge firefighters. And Cambridge was the first union ever to hire Neil Rossman, and Fall River was the second. We knew each other well. We used to, we shared a lot as firefighters and as veterans. So this is the speech he gave, and I think it's very, very. It's going to be difficult for me to get through this, so I apologize if I don't get through it very quickly. But his personal story is what's important in this speech, because there are over 58,000 personal stories on that wall, and there are literally millions of personal stories for veterans throughout this country. So this is Brad's speech when the wall came through his town, the moving wall. On May 6, 1981, a jury of 8 architects and sculptors charged with choosing a winner of a congressionally authorized competition to choose a design for a Vietnam Veterans Memorial unanimously selected a design by Maya Yin Lin, a 21-year-old Yale University architecture student. On November 13th, 1982, the aforementioned memorial was dedicated in Washington, D.C. The results of this design are before us tonight in a mobile replica of the memorial in Washington, D.C., which is, and it has come to be known as the moving wall. The memorial has been controversial since its inception, like the Vietnam War itself was controversial. It was not a traditional memorial design, and it was too abstract, were some of the criticisms. Academics and mainstream writers weighed in freely with opinions. Many argued that the memorial design was an anti-war statement, which to me always begged the question, how could a war memorial solely dedicated to memorializing our dead be somehow construed as pro-war? Of all the articles I have either read or read about, the one that stuck in my mind and continues to stick in my mind was Ambiguity as Persuasion, the Vietnam Veterans Memorial by Sonia Force. Ambiguity as persuasion. It would be hard for me to think of something less ambiguous than the Vietnam Veterans Memorial, and more persuasive than its stark, lucid purpose. While some speak eloquently of the healing aspects of the memorial in light of the scars left by the deaths of so many young men, and undoubtedly this is true, I have always thought that personal reflection of those that were affected in some way by the Vietnam War was the result of a visit to the memorial. For my part, and more specifically, my reflection has always taken the form of unambiguous remembrance of a personal nature. Dennis Smith was my friend. We first met in North Carolina while we were both attending the Marine Corps Infantry Training Regiment in the early fall of 1967. We both had the same MOS, military occupational specialty, and we were trained as field radio operators. After completing infantry training, we then attended the Field Radio Operators School in Camp Pendleton, California. Throughout the period, we were inseparable, friends, real friends and confidants. Upon completion of the training, we left for Vietnam on the same plane. I still remember some of our conversations on that plane. We were 18 years old. Once in country, we were assigned to the 3rd Marine Division and lost contact after regimental assignments. Mine was eventually the 1st Battalion, 9th Marines as a field radio operator with a forward observer team. I spent time both in Charlie and Delta Company as part of Operation Pegasus. And we were stationed at Khe Sanh. And after what was called the siege of Khe Sanh, I was with Delta 19. It wasn't always and is always hard for me to understand strategic decisions that require the taking of real estate that had been taken and abandoned. But that's what we faced at the start of April 1968 with the prospect of assaulting and dying on hills that our predecessors had also fought and died on. On April 3rd, 1968, on the eve of an assault of one of the many hills that surrounded the combat base at Khe Sanh, I heard my name called, and I couldn't believe it when I saw it was Dennis Smith. We had been in the same area of operation for months, different units, and never knew it. Like on the plane, I will never forget the conversation we had that night so long ago. But eventually we got to the work at hand and talked about the upcoming battle. Dennis's unit was expected to encounter the heaviest fighting, and mine was to be in more of a reserve role. But as with many things in war, things don't turn out as expected. My unit encountered the heaviest fighting and suffered the most casualties. While Dennis's unit had only one KIA, my friend. Dennis Smith was killed on April 4th, 1968. And his name was inscribed on the wall behind us. I have thought about him every single day since April 4th. This memorial and my memories that it elicits are not ambiguous. The best description that I have ever read of the memorial was powerfully evocative, minimalist monument. Truly, it is powerfully evocative. And in memories and reflections that it forces, but it should be equally powerfully evocative and a warning to our leaders as an unambiguous reminder of the terrible price our young men and women can pay when they decide that war is necessary. Dennis Smith was my friend and a hero, as are all the others who are memorialized on the wall behind us. And when I think of him and all my other friends who died during that awful war, I think of the inscription on the Confederate War Memorial in Washington, D.C., that to me speaks of them and their deaths, which in part says, not for fame or reward, not for place or rank, not lured by ambition or goaded by necessity, but in a simple obedience to duty. These men sacrificed all and died.
That's a touching speech. Your friend must have really put a lot of feeling and emotion into that. I can see that it's very emotional to you. And it speaks volumes of what Memorial Day is about. Memorial Day is not about cookouts and barbecues and clam boils and beaches and trips, road trips. Memorial Day is about remembering the lives lost in defense of this country. And to those who are still suffering those war wounds to this day, we've lost more men post-war, post-military service, because of things that happened during the war than in some cases should have ever been lost in any case. So let's remember all these people this weekend and just take one moment out of this weekend, 1 minute, and think about it. And as a matter of fact, why don't you go down to Bicentennial Park and pay a visit to the Vietnam Memorial Wall and look at the names that are on there and think about what that means to a lot of people. I know what it means to Chip. I know what it means to many other people who fought bravely in that war. But when they came back, they were not greeted with cheers and parades. They were greeted with jeers and discontent and distrust. So remember, they all served, and they all served for you.
And everybody who ever put on a uniform. But let me say one of the reasons I read the letter, which was obviously extremely difficult for me, that when you look at that wall, you see 58,000 names, and it does have an effect. But one of the reasons I read Brad's story was that to people who have friends on that wall, every single one of those names has a story like Brad's. Everything. And that's what makes it so difficult for me to read letters. When I read names, I understand the connections they have. When I went to the wall in Washington after 30 some years and finally got there and saw the names of my friends that are on that wall, it is frankly overwhelming. And it never goes away. They were your friends. You think of them every day. And on Memorial Day, you think of them even more. And that's the key. The sacrifice that these men made for this nation has to be remembered and put it in perspective, because that sacrifice allows this country to exist. And for this country to be more worried about pronouns than fixing itself is a problem, because Memorial Day should be not only observed, it should be respected. And remember that every single person who ever lost anyone in combat, let alone the hundreds and hundreds of thousands of American servicemen who lost body parts, who have two legs missing and an arm, or two arms missing, and doing what, as they said it, as Brad said at the end of his speech, for nothing more than duty, because they were fighting for this nation, sometimes for all the wrong reasons, but they still gave it all. So,
well, thanks for sharing that, Chip. It was very, very, very emotional and very moving. I want to thank our viewers. Remember, we're not on Monday. And remember, starting tomorrow, masks are not required, and it's back to normal. Stay safe, stay angry, and hold your politicians accountable. Thanks for watching. Have a great weekend.